Morning. I'm just here to show you this morning how we're going to fix a gurgling problem on these evaporative coolers. I found out that there's a constant gurgling, bubbling noise coming from this units, well, this specific one. So I don't know if it's for all the units, but if you have a gurgling or bubbling noise and it's irritating you, I'm going to show you a quick fix this morning. They're all the same, the design and the makes and models, they all work on the same principle. The water gets pumped up from the bottom water tank, gets pumped up to the top, and the water drips down these pads on the side, and the fan draws the air through. So I'm going to quickly show you how I tackled the problem with getting that noise to stop. Very quick fix. All you do is you undo the two screws here at the back. On most of them, they should all be the same. It's just two screws holding the back pad. And you basically just got to lift it up. You can see there's a gap there. So the quickest thing is you just lift it up, pull the bottom out, and slide it down, and you've released this back pad. Now, as you can see, if Ingrid comes a bit closer here, the water gets pumped up, comes down this drip feeder here, and it will run down this pad, gets collected at the bottom on these two pipes, and then the water goes back into the water tank. Now, I found out that it was bubbling into this water, and then I realized the only problem could be it's getting air bubbles in the system here, because that lays in the water and it eventually goes into the water, causing air bubbles and this gurgling noise. So all I did was drill two holes just above the highest point of the water line. You can see the two holes. So that releases the air from the pipe, and that stopped the gurgling noise. So I'm going to show you now how I just drilled two holes. This specific pipe is difficult to drill because once you drill, the pipe seems to close a bit, or even if you just use a punch. And the best I found was a soldering iron. So let me just put this back so I can just show you how we remedied the problem with the pipes. We'll sort that out now. Okay, so if my wife just... Okay, we're just going to show you how to drill these pipes that are in most of these evaporative coolers. So if you try and drill it, which I find that the pipe just seems to close up a bit. So if my wife comes a little bit closer here, so if you drill a little hole in here, what tends to happen, okay, there's a decent sized hole there. So you can either use a drill bit or a punch, but I found the punch doesn't seem to close properly. And as you can see, it's not big enough. If you take a soldering iron, which can work as well, you just punch a hole in with the soldering iron. And it's got to be at least 8 millimeters or so to let the air out. I found out. See now, both of those are sufficient size. That is not, I found it not a sufficient size to let the air out. But those two let the air bubbles out and you got no noise. Now, the reason why we install these evaporative coolers in this part of the world, we're in the Karoo in South Africa, is because we are a hot, dry climate and they only use very little wattage. This particular one uses about 150 watts of power, compared to an air conditioning which is roughly between 1200 and 1500 watts, which we are off the grid, and that's a lot of power for the using on the batteries. So this, during the evening, it takes very little power, and with being a dry climate, this part of the world, we use approximately on a very hot day, around about 38 degrees centigrade, we use about 40 liters a day on this particular unit. If it's not so hot, between 20 and it drops down 15 as it gets to about 28 degrees. Very efficient and cheap, these things to run versus air conditioned. That's the reason why we acquired 2 of these, one for the kitchen where we are now and one for our bedroom. And that is basically it. So now once you finish the pipes, made the holes, so all you do basically, you've made the holes, you just drop it back into, and it's got to be above the highest point of the water level so that the air can escape. It mustn't be low down there into the water. You're going to have the same problem. So it's got to be above the highest level. So when you've done the holes on both pipes, so you just put the pipes back in, make sure the pipes are in, and then you just shift this back into position underneath, and you slide it in at the bottom. Tighten the 2 screws and your problem should be solved. Now let's hope that solves your problem with the gurgling and the bubbling you got on your evaporative, or known as water coolers as well.